Welcome to Black Belt Selling with Stephanie and Anna Scheller. I'm Anna.
And I'm Stephanie.
We're a mother-daughter team who are passionate about helping you kick through the obstacles that are keeping you from closing more sales. On Black Belt Selling, we have guests, we prepare content, and we bring you valuable information to help you grow your business so that you can close more sales and make more money. You can learn more about us by going to facebook.com/groups/Black Belt Selling. There we post content. We have wonderful people who contribute motivational quotes and posts, and you'll also get to know exactly when our shows are live on SoundCloud. So go to www.facebook.com/groups/Black Belt Selling. Now, today I'm extremely pleased to introduce to you our guest, Alise Cortez. Alise, welcome to Black Belt Selling.
Thank you so much, Anna and Stephanie. It's so fun to be here.
Well, it's fun to have you. Alise is an engagement and development catalyst based in Dallas, Texas. And as I was saying before the show got started, it's practically in our backyard. She designs and delivers professional development, leadership, and engagement workshops and speaks on various related principles or topics. She's a Gallup certified strengths coach, and she also co-founded and served as Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Improved Experience, a consulting firm that offers online feedback solutions and research for the human resource and recruiting industry. Today, she's focused on igniting meaningful development that increases employee performance and facilitates organizational transformation at Insigniam Insigniam, there we go. She is the host of Voice America radio show, Working on Purpose. You are going to love her down-to-earth approachability and the authentic connection that you're going to hear. She's a delightful person. I've had the extreme pleasure of being interviewed on her show, and I know we are in for a wonderful, wonderful show. So, tell us how you got involved in all of these wonderful, wonderful titles and qualifications that you've developed, Alise.
Thank you, Anna, for that introduction. It was wonderful. Well, let me just say back up that I started my professional life. I do things the hard way, right? That's just kind of how I'm wired. My mother will tell you that, I'll just say this, my mother will tell you that I was born breech, and I've done everything the hard way since then. But I didn't go to college until I was 24. I did various kinds of sales work up and through my 20s. And I really knew in high school that I wanted to study the field of psychology, but I chose not to do it because I thought it would mean I was going to be a counselor just dealing with people who would snivel about their problems but not do anything about them, and that would make me crazy, and so I would think that would not do too well. So I didn't study psychology, even though I knew it was the right field from back then. But the divining rod of life brought me back to it, and over time, I did get my bachelor's in liberal studies, a master's in liberal studies, and then I pursued a PhD in human development, which is essentially psychology and sociology. And that was begun in my early 30s. And about that time, ladies, is when I really found myself. I fell into what is really, for all intents and purposes, the human capital space. And I began recruiting information technology professionals in Seattle, Washington, and I fell in love with my product, which was people. And I realized that was where I wanted to broach my craft. So that's how I got into it. Did you want me to say more of kind of how I've navigated my field, or wasn't sure how far you want me to go?
I think that would be interesting because, we're in sales, people are in the people business. And a lot of times we think we're in the product business. We're in the sell this program or sell this car or sell this house. But really we are working with people. And I think you sharing that would be very insightful to our audience.
Okay, will do. Okay, so I had been involved in various sales roles, quite really enjoyed my life as a full-time dedicated salesperson. And then when I began in the recruiting function, of course, what I was doing is I was looking for talent. I was looking for heads, and I was placing those heads at various client companies, mostly telecommunications. And so I was on that front end of the talent acquisition in terms of the talent life cycle. So I did that for several years, and then along the way, that's when I co-founded the Improved Experience with a Business Partner, which was human resource business intelligence, mostly around recruiting and retaining talent. And then along the way, what happened was I began to discover that I really enjoyed helping people become more of what they could become and contribute more of their talents once they were employed. So that moved me into more of the learning and development space within the life cycle. Once somebody was already employed, how can we make them better and make them more engaged and give them more skills and develop their careers so that they could move up in their careers? So I did that kind of work for lots of years around leadership development and professional development, employee engagement kind of work, where I was assessing talent and engagement, helping to improve those situations within workplaces. And then along the way, just as you might guess and imagine, just naturally, organically, I continued along that life cycle, and now I've moved past leadership development kind of stuff and now more into organizational transformation. So the full gamut of the life cycle, if you will, has kind of happened sort of naturally through that divining rod over time. And so today at Insigniam, the focus is really around very high-level executive development, leadership development for the sake of improving the executives in the organizational performance and then moving around transformation for the company. So that's kind of the full tilt of where I've come from in the last, I guess, almost 20 years.
Wow. Huh. That's quite an impressive resume.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you.
I mean, wow. So you've spent a lot of time in education. How has that helped you out with building your business?
Yeah, I'm one of those junkies, as I mentioned, ladies. I didn't start college until I was 24, and once I got into college, I really got the bug and, went through the whole thing and figured, why stop? Just keep going. So, how my education has helped my business, I certainly think I'm a better business person because of my business, even though my education is liberal studies and then psychology and sociology. It taught me the habit of inquiry and looking for other ways beyond what I naturally think on my own to navigate my business. It also taught me to question, certain things that I thought that I knew about just for myself. What did I assume, et cetera. And then, frankly, finally, Anna and Stephanie, what my education has done for my business is it allowed me to make connections via like-minded people and common interests with other people who cared about the same things that I was educated in, and those became part of my network, right? Those ever-precious relationships that we talk about. And those people then, many of which became enrolled in the things that I cared about, and really a lot of them became clients along the way, and vice versa.
Wow. Yeah, I think we sometimes forget that we are all in one way or another involved in sales. Even if we're not directly involved in sales, we're still in those interactions that ultimately, because sales is really about building relationships. And obviously that's what you did. As you were learning and applying your skills, you were building a business it almost sounds not quite on accident, but it happened as you were working in your field. Am I getting that right?
I think so, Anna, and I think really I like to use the word organic because I can't really honestly tell you that I employed a lot of strategy in it. I do more of that today than I ever did before, now that I've joined Insignia. But when I was on my own, I would tell you that really those relationships that I cultivated really, then it became a matter of being referred from one client to another and from one gig to the next and come and speak here, and it became like that. Well, just like how you and I met, of course, through Ashland Curtin, right? Once you met somebody who said, oh, I get what you do, and I love what you did for me, you got to go talk to my friend down the road, right? That's kind of how it went, and it was from one connection to the next. And that's really, I would say, too, how so much of the rest of my life has been governed, too, is just how those relationships have unfolded and then allowed me connection to somebody else that I wouldn't have otherwise met.
that's kind of cool. And I like the fact that it's happened very, very organically. I was actually talking with a lady earlier today, and she goes, you know, Stephanie, the biggest issue I have with talking to you is you're a sales trainer, and I just feel like I don't want to be focused on sales. I want to be focused on people and the organic relationship building. And I said, well, that's kind of the point of sales. So I love the fact you completely zoned in on that concept.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, Stephanie, right? And I think that, let me just say, I just think people are yummy. Yesterday I moderated a panel at Southern Methodist University for my public relations students, and I brought in two very lovely, talented women who helped give their perspective on how to navigate their careers and what they've learned along the way. And we were talking about just, you know, the sheer importance of cultivating relationships and being authentic and simply being interested. And, you know, what they talked about is the two of them are self-described introverts. I'm not quite a flaming extrovert, but I'm getting there. So nobody's safe for me at a cocktail party or in a grocery line. You know, nobody's safe from me. I can't really help. So that probably helps for me. Is I'm just curious about people.
I think you could speak to that one pretty well, Mom. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. It's really funny because when I started to really get into sales and understand sales, a family member said, well, Anna, that was so natural for you because that's just the way you are. And I'm like, you mean I've been selling all my life and I didn't even know it? That's kind of weird.
Okay, so I do have to ask, though, I know one of our questions was you currently work in human capital. Can you describe that one a little bit? Because it almost sounds like slave labor, and I'm pretty sure that's not exactly what we're talking about right here.
It just depends on the organization, Stephanie. And at home, human capital meant child slaves. So just, you know.
You ladies, oh my goodness. Well, I definitely, let's make sure that we make a break from Alise Cortez and slavery. Definitely don't want to be associated with that for sure, please. So I've kind of called myself, you know, a human capital person because everything that I do has to do with activating the talent, the potential, the performance in people that will actually drive the performance of their job and for their companies. And so, you know, it really has a lot to do with being able to develop that talent, to be able to develop those people. And I purposely chose something, and this makes so much sense for me. I purposely chose something that meant that there was going to be ongoing change, ongoing growth, and transformation is certainly, you know, based and founded in the idea of ongoing change and growth, because that's really who I am at my core. I mean, I am a self-proclaimed Maslow fan. I want to forever work towards self-actualization, which really probably by its definition won't ever actually fully happen. You just keep getting maybe somewhat closer to it in life, but it's something to ever aspire for. And so that growth element for me that's so grounded in how I look at being a human capital professional is really what I drive to. I mean, just last week, ladies, I had the privilege of working on site with a client in Los Angeles with one of my partners here at Insigniam, and we got to work on a breakthrough project for this company that's really trying to, you know, really drive themselves and jump to the next level and then some in their growth trajectory in terms of how they show up in the marketplace and how they position themselves as salespeople and how they're trying to be seen among their consumers, and it requires a whole new mindset to pull that off. Well, that's transformation, right? And only a human being can do that. So that's why I situate myself in the human capital space. That's, for me, as I say, I think people are yummy, and I never tire of them, and I always want to help them get better.
Nice.
I think that's really important. You know, I was listening, and you're talking about transformation, and really, that's a gift that you can give people and help them work through the skills and the talents that you have, which in turn helps them to become more confident, more excited about their life, you know. How would you say that translates and helps people in a sales relationship?
Well, I love that question, Anna. That's interesting. So I think that, the more that we can ground ourselves in possibility, what can we do, right? Because today, more and more, right, within each of our individual roles, we're each called to do more than we did yesterday. It's just a fact of life. And that means that we have to do it we cannot achieve the result with the mindset that we walked into the room with, generally speaking. So it's going to require some kind of change. So with regard to how do we apply that at sales, I really think, and one of the things that we really stand for here at Insigniam is this idea of being an exquisite listener. So, really, really listening for what the other person is saying and the possibilities that surround it and what's behind that speaking, what's in the background of that speaking that's informing that perspective, whether it's fear or, excitement, whatever it is that the prospect might be talking about. There's something there to be heard if only you will stand in that place and really listen for it. And I think that I would really want to encourage just, sheer and genuine curiosity. I think, honestly, if you go into a conversation with that kind of curiosity and genuineness to really understand somebody, I mean, what I find is that that's pretty much irresistible to people. Who doesn't want to be listened to at that level?
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I think we're at a point in society, I hate to say society, but in general, we're at a point where we don't get that kind of attention. I emailed someone earlier today. He sent me a 3-page, it was his first contact with me. It was a cold reach on LinkedIn. And it was like I had to scroll 3 times through the message to get to the top. All right. So I replied back and I said, dude, in a microwave society, no one's going to read this. That's basically my whole response. But I think you're right. We get so many people that are not paying attention to us. So when you do find someone who does pay attention, it stands out, and it really means a lot because we're also busy paying attention to 30 other things. So I think that's a really good point.
Thank you, Stephanie. I agree. I really do. Yeah.
Now, I do know you are also a big deal when it comes to leadership, and I've been working my butt off to become a better leader this year, trying to learn as much as I can. So I have to ask, there are 101 plus different styles of leadership. So what do you feel is the most effective? What do you teach? How do you teach people to lead?
That's a great question, Stephanie, and thank you for the compliment on leadership. I don't certainly know that I've got any command of the market in terms of leadership. I've certainly dabbled in my own lessons, et cetera. But what I would say to what's the most effective style of leadership, I'm going to give you the big old fat pat answer. You ready?
Okay.
It depends. It depends. But I would say, and I don't even know, ladies, that I could speak to whatever kinds of leadership there are out there, but I would certainly say that, I'm a fan of situational leadership. What does the situation and person need? Because from my perspective, both in what I have managed to get to do in terms of work to help other leaders become more effective in what they do as leaders, as well as what have I experienced in my own leadership, both professionally and then via community service. What we want to do in leaders is we want to be able to activate people to bring their best talents and contribute their best efforts themselves to the cause, right? That's what we want to do. Mm-hmm. So whatever that requires, however we elicit that, I think it does really require a lens or a focus on those people or persons or individual that we're trying to activate. What do they need? So for some people, right, they want to be given an incredible, huge stretch assignment that lets them just feel like I sunk my teeth into it, I went for it, I ran really hard, and I nailed it, and I'm so much better now because of it. And I've had the privilege of getting to do that with people before and seeing them shine in that process. Other people, right, want to be recognized for whatever contributions they contribute perhaps daily. For them, that's incredibly motivating and rewarding for them. And still others are like, just keep me out of the spotlight, just let me have my head down, right? So I really think the key to exceptional leadership is really being intent and key on which people are we trying to enroll in our cause? Who do we need to make this happen and pull it off? And therefore, what do they need from me to want to do that for us?
You know, I'm taking notes here, and the whole thing about intent and the intent is important. And, you know, a good leader, and I know you'll agree with me on this, Alise, a good leader is not in it for his own glorification or her own glorification or to spotlight themselves. A good leader is there for the person that they're with. And, you know, and it follows true in sales as well. But what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in leadership? Because you have so much experience. You've seen so much, probably more than Stephanie and I put together. And I'm just curious, what is the most important lesson you've learned or you've seen in working with other people?
Wow. You know, gosh, there's a lot of ways I could probably answer that. And when you say most important lesson, right, I've learned so many things over the years through my attempts at leadership and then, of course, trying to help other leaders become more of who they can become as leaders and becoming more effective as leaders. But, you know, I guess if I think about it, at the end of the day, what I've really learned is that the level of my own commitment and passion in whatever it is that I'm trying to do is really what is a huge determinant of how I'm going to be able to enroll other people in that cause. So the extent to which I am excited and charged about something and the extent to which I myself am committed, I really think that is the proportional thing that steps the balance toward people choosing to be involved or enrolled or not. So I guess at the end of the day, that's what I would say.
So
I love that, and I think that's an amazing, okay, I just have to make this point, right? That's an awesome sales tip, too. When you think about it, you break it down, you are only, right, leadership is about selling other people to do stuff with you. You're only ever going to get someone as sold on an idea or a concept as you are. So that's cool. That's an awesome takeaway. Leadership, sales, I mean, the whole 9 yards.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think about it, right? So it's so interesting that you say that the way you did, Stephanie, because, right, on the one hand, you know, if you see somebody who's really passionate about something that they believe in or they're behind or they're a part of, it's really hard to ignore that passion. Now, even if you are a person who is skeptical, like let's say you're like, yeah, I still need data, though. You still got to show me data about this, why this is so cool. You're at least going to be paying attention to them being passionate about what it is they're describing, just because of the energy that they're casting out from it or about it. And I think that, and then you add that piece of a commitment piece of, hey, I'm not just talking about this. I'm not just spouting this. Look, I'm in the trenches too. I've got my sleeves rolled up. I've got my boots on, or I've even kicked my boots off, and whatever it takes to get across the finish line. I think it's really hard to resist somebody who is employing those two characteristics.
And
I
think
agree.
it builds,
I agree.
And I think it builds trust. Trust is so important. No matter what you're doing, whenever you're trying to bridge the gap with people, trust is powerful. And when you demonstrate that kind of commitment and that kind of, let's do this together, I'm with you, I'm not standing over you, but I'm here beside you. I think that's powerful for every facet of life.
It is. And, you know, one of the things that I was thinking about our conversation about what we might talk about here, and I was remembering some of the work that I did several years ago when I was in community service leadership roles. And, you know, here it is, you got to imagine, this is community service. These people are volunteers. You're not paying them anything. In fact, you're taking time away from their family, from their jobs, for them to do whatever the community service thing is that you're asking them to do. So you're up against a few odds here. So getting people to be enrolled in that activity and want to produce the result that you've asked them to produce requires a little bit of creativity. And again, going back to that situational thing that we were talking about, and I remember, I think really some of my best experiences and the things I'm most proud of when it comes to leadership occurred through seeing something in somebody, believing that they could do more than they thought they could do, and knowing that then they had some inclination to want to do that, giving them enough help and coaching and support to be able to help them pull that off, and then supporting them, cheering for them, and then letting them come through the finish line with this fantastic result they didn't think that they could produce, and feeling smashing about themselves because of it. To me, I mean, that's as good as it gets to be a leader.
Mm.
Well, I think that's a great segue, because I have a question for you. You talk about breakthrough performance. Does that have anything to do with what you were just talking about? Because it seems like the perfect definition right there.
Oh, I love that segue, Stephanie. That's so cool. I hadn't put it in that direction or that connection, but yeah, I do think there is an absolute connection there, because really breakthrough performance has to do with the idea that you are going to perform at a level and in a capacity that you can't currently conceptualize. That's really what it comes down to, right? That's really what breakthrough performance really is. And when we do breakthrough performance work, a lot of times what we're doing, and especially if it's like a keystone project, we are crafting with the client what result do they need and want to produce. And that seems to be way beyond anything that's currently possible or predictable. And when it's a keystone project, we would have to do that actually. We'd have to recreate and craft a whole new culture in order to actually pull that off. So then you have a whole other level of complexity. So think about all those moving parts, right? So again, that's what I get so excited about the work that I do, because it allows me to be able to work on this plane. And I think about it as like an ever-moving cylinder, if you will. It's always spinning. It's always turning. It's always bringing in new energy and casting off additional energy, and rolling and bringing in new possibilities. And so, yeah, I do think that breakthrough performance and that leadership example that I just gave before about somebody catalyzing themselves to another level, yeah, is totally related and interdependent.
You know, and along those lines, I mean, all of this conversation is really flowing so well, because my question becomes, if somebody is serious about self-development, you know, what advice do you have for them? It's such a key thing for anybody who wants to improve sales or become a master at anything in life, but especially sales. So what advice do you have for people who are serious about reaching the next level in your life?
Wow, you know, it's so funny. This might be my lens, so forgive me. But when I hear you ask me that question, the first thing I think about is coaching, right? That's what comes to my mind when I think about somebody's coming to you about self-development. So, and I've had the privilege of having people come to me and say, I think you could probably help me. Would you coach me? So I've done a lot of coaching that's happened, again, organically. And then, of course, through the course of Insignia, we do a lot of executive coaching around the work that we do. So it's a different capacity still. But the first thing I would want to ask anyone who comes to me about self-development is, why? What do you think you want to develop? What is it that you want to develop? And then the second question is, why? Why do you want to develop that? So the question, oftentimes they'll say, well, I got a bad performance review, so I want to get better at X. Okay, got it. So that would be, you know, a reactionary kind of a response. Then if somebody says, well, I really want to grow to the next level in my career, that's much more of a proactive vein, right? So they require a different response entirely, I think. So I would want to get really clear about what is it that you think you want to improve or develop or grow into, and why. And I'm a really big fan of doing two things, doing some kind of an assessment work that lets people gain a new level of understanding about themselves. So self-awareness is really important, self-understanding. You said in my introduction that I'm a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach. I am. I use that as a basis tool for people to be able to gain some insight into generally what motivates them. It's not about really what they can do, but more about how they tend to go about things. I also am a big fan of Illumina Spark, which is a tool that it's based on the Big Five, but it gives you 3 different slices of your persona, your everyday, your underlying, and your stress. So that really gives you some powerful insight. So some kind of an assessment that lets you learn something about yourself that maybe you didn't know before, another angle. And then the other thing that I'm really a big fan of when people are really serious about self-development, and I did this for a course that I was in just recently around leadership, they had us go out and interview various people in our communities who knew something about us, and we just asked them 5 questions, like what are my strengths, my weaknesses, what can I always be counted on for, what can I never be counted on for, something along those lines. And ladies, I learned more about myself just asking people who knew me those basic questions than I ever thought possible. Ever.
Wow.
So I would start there. That would be a basis of a start. And then from there, once you have that kind of basic data, then you've got a game plan as to, okay, now what do we want to do about this?
I like how you gave them kind of that I like how you gave them not just like an actionable step, but then, okay, what's the next step? Because sometimes people forget that oftentimes the first step is just the first step. It's, not the third step and the fourth step and the fifth step, and the first step is going to get you started but not always get you there. So I like the fact that you kind of broke that one down. Mom, you have a question for her?
I'm actually having trouble with sneezing, and so I need you to. But what I'd like to do is from here, because your radio show host, you're on Voice America. Oh, good, I could do that without sneezing. That's good news. I'm sure there are people that are connecting with what you're saying, Alise, because I'm listening thinking, wow, what could I learn by doing these assessments and stuff? But you actually have a radio show called Working on Purpose. So I'd really love for you to tell our audience how you got started in radio and the purpose of the show.
I love talking about how I got started in radio. It was totally, you're going to be shocked to know, unintentional and organic. Sorry, it's just like a broken record.
That's the best.
I did not aspire to be a radio show host. It was not something that I ever said, when I grow up, I want to host a radio show or anything like that, right? Or even in the human capital space. What happened, it goes back to what we were saying before about pursuing interests. And so one thing I haven't talked about is I am a lifelong learner, and I'm also a researcher. I've been investigating how people experience meaning in their work and how their work relates to their sense of self, who they are as a human being, their identity, since I finished my PhD program, back in 2005. So I've been doing ongoing research for that. I did a very, very large postdoc research effort that basically allowed me to find 15 modes of engagement, 15 ways that people engage themselves and find meaning, and then also express or somehow gain a sense of who they are through their work. And in the course of doing that research, my alma mater, Fielding, said, hey, why don't you go ahead and see about proposing an article for the work that you've done, submit it off to this business conference, and if they accept it, not only will you get to go to India and go present your results at this business conference, right, but they'll publish your paper. And I was like, you had me at India. It's my favorite ethnic food. I'd never been to India. It was on my bucket list, and so really that was the basis. So that was geared to happen in December of 2014. Well, here we are in October of 2014, and I end up getting a call from a referral, one of those kind of deals where a friend of mine said, hey, I can't help this client of mine. They want something to do with engagement work. Would you call them up and see if you can help? So I ended up doing this work with this client saying, hey, look, I can create this workshop for you based on my brand new research, my 15 modes of engagement. And they said, we love that idea. We want something that's going to help people understand how they connect with their work, and we want them to better connect with each other. Come in, do it. So Anna and Stephanie, literally, I just finished. I put on that workshop for them in November of 2014, and I was high as a kite from the experience of doing it for them. It was well received, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Maybe I do have something here. And literally, I'm driving back to my office, and my phone rings, and it's Voice America saying, hey, found you on LinkedIn, went to your website, see that you speak, you're a researcher, you're writing a book. That usually makes for a good radio show host. What do you think? You want to host a show? And I literally pulled the phone away from my ear, and I could see all these connections. You know, the India Business Conference presenting my research. I just came back from presenting it at a client, got paid for it. And then it's Voice America calling, and I literally got the chills. And wow. I thought, well, you know, I don't know. Let's, on the basis alone of, let me just put the stuff out that I care about and see who shows up to the party. So that, I started in February of 2015, and I've been having I do a show every week since then.
That's super cool. So Dale Carnegie has this quote, okay, he says, people rarely succeed unless they have fun with what they're doing. It sounds like you live and breathe that.
You know, I do have fun in what I'm doing, and I oftentimes tell people when I'm on the show, I'm like, shh, don't tell anybody. I'm having more fun than I'm supposed to be having. Don't tell anybody. But going back to what Anna said earlier about learning and such, one of the reasons I continue to host the radio show, frankly, is because, one, I find really interesting people like you guys have been talking about to talk with each week who inspire me and inform me. But really the discipline of going out to find a guest every single week makes me proactive in my own learning. I consider that session each week my own little mini professional development series. And then if somebody else gets value out of it, then fantastic. Cool. Yeah.
Well, you know, Stephanie, I think we can say the same thing. I can't think of a guest that we've had that we would say, oh, I didn't learn anything. That was a total waste. It's, you know, the radio shows do that, and it's so exciting and it's fun. It's fun to have like you, Alise, because it's, you know, you have such a really cool perspective on leadership and working with people, and you know, really that's something that we all need to embrace, is to learn to love our work and find the fun things, find the connections like you have found the connections in enjoying your life, enjoying your work, and also contributing to other people's well-being and development.
Yeah, it's a privilege. It's truly a privilege, and in so doing, I believe and hope that I become a better human being and a better professional and a better business person along the way. It's like that ongoing, interactive, synergistic dynamic, right, that we each make the other better as we interact with each other.
Now, what would you say, because I know there are people that get into jobs because maybe they feel forced. Sometimes people get into sales and they find out they really don't like it. What advice would you give for somebody in a situation where they're not enjoying their work? Is that something they can change, look for the good and make it something they enjoy, or should they just find another job?
Oh, that's such a great question. How much time do we have to talk about this? This is so great. Well, let me say first and foremost, you know, whether we're talking about any kind of a job that they might have, doing any kind of work, or whether it's sales in particular, what the first thing that I would say is that each of us have to get really, really clear about how does that work occur for us. Does it occur as a burden? Is something we have to do every day? Is it like we hate our boss and we have to just trudge through because we're waiting for the next beating from our boss? Or is it something that allows us access to doing certain activities that we couldn't otherwise get on our own? Pretty cool. Does it allow us a means to be able to put our kids through college? That's really important to us. Also pretty cool. But I think really getting clear about how does the work occur for the person, and that takes some analysis. It can take some conversation with other people to get clear about that. And I can tell you, when I did my interviews for the research that I was doing to find my 15 modes of engagement, I can guarantee you that most of the people that I interviewed got a much deeper understanding and clarity about how the work was occurring for them and how they were experiencing it and what it meant to them than before the interview. So that's the first thing that I would say. By illustration, you said, you know, if somebody finds out they just hate their work, should they quit? Maybe. But here's the wonderful, amazing thing about being human. We are meaning makers. We make meaning in everything we do. There's no meaning out there. We make that meaning. So we assign the meaning to everything that we do, every person, every interaction, every job, every leader, every boss, etc. So in my research, let me just share a very short example. I found 15 modes of engagement. One, on the one end, there's this idea of transcendent connection. People are doing work that they feel like, they really are connecting people to a higher power. So a lot of people that are priests, et cetera, kind of fall into that category, working in a religious capacity. On the very other end of the dynamic is existential crisis. People that feel like the work that they're doing totally, it takes something away from them in a negative way, or negatively impacts or informs their sense of being, their sense of self. It's a very, very raw, negative place to be for people. Existential crisis. So when I interviewed this one chef, he agreed. So he cried several times during the course of his interview about his work and how things were going and what was it like for him. And when I came back with his result and said, I think you are exhibiting the existential crisis mode of engagement, he said, I completely agree. So 6 months later, we come back and we circle around. He goes, Alise, I got really, really great news. I've moved up in the modes of engagement, and now I'm just in, I forget exactly what the zone was, but it was something around, just being comfortable in his misery, basically. And so he'd moved up like 5 modes, right? And he's doing the exact same job, working for the same boss. What's the difference? His mindset, how he has chosen to frame that work. And so now he sees it as, I've allowed myself to be able to look for what's good about this situation. I get to do really cool top-line work. I get to make the food that I feel passionate about. I get to send my kids through college. It's a pretty good paying gig. So you change that perspective, that mental frame, just maybe 2 degrees, and it makes all the difference in the world. So, we have the ability to change how we feel about our relationships, how we sell, how we experience our work on a dime. It's completely within our control. There's an effort involved in that, right? There's a discipline and a muscle that's involved in that, and an ongoing care and feeding that's involved in that. But we absolutely have the ability as meaning makers to do that.
Wow. I love that. I love that you just said that, because it's true. And sometimes you have control of your life, or you believe that other people have control of it. And, only one way is going to help you love what you do and enjoy your life, because when control is not in your hands, I can't imagine anyone who thinks that, they don't have control over their life that's happy. And I think what you just detailed out is exactly how we do have that much control over things that we would previously say are completely out of our control. Can't do anything about this bad boss. Terrible job. So that was awesome. Now, unfortunately, we're coming up on the end already, but I don't think we have even remotely scratched the surface of what all you know. So do you have maybe some books out there or something? I think you have got some books out there, right, Alise?
Well, I've contributed 2 chapters to 2 separate books, and then I'm working on my own book around my research. So I have a chapter out in the book called Behind Her Brand, which is really about how do individuals, mostly business owners, create a brand around which they evangelize themselves. And then I have a chapter in Outstanding Results, out of box thinking for better business and life. So I have a chapter in each of those. And really, though, my website, with regard to some of the blogs that I've written and relative to my radio shows, I'm quite proud of as well. If any of your listeners want to give me a kick in the pants and to get my other book done around my research, I would welcome that as well.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of a kick in the pants. I would love to see that. I think you're brilliant, lady, and I would love to see that book when you have it ready.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This has been really enlightening. We don't think of leadership and sales as being tied in, yet they are, and they're interwoven, because it's all about how we live our lives. It's all about how we show up every day of our life, every moment. And I love how you were talking about how you can change your life through a change of perspective. But it's work. It doesn't happen overnight. That chef did not, he didn't wake up the next morning and go, yes, I'm going to jump 2 levels of engagement. This is going to be fantastic. It took him time, but we all have that ability. It's not unique to us here on the show today, but it's unique to us as human beings, and probably one of the greatest things that makes working with human capital, working with people, the most exciting thing we could ever do. Thank you for joining us, Alise.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Stephanie. It's been a delight.
Absolutely. It has been fantastic to have you here with us. Guys, I want to encourage you. I know you come back and join us. For our listeners out there, you come back, you join us every single week. You know, and that's important because we have to keep growing. As Alise was talking about earlier, and as it is for Anna and I, this is a great way for us to have to keep growing, to keep going out there and finding new people to talk to. And I challenge you this week to find 3 people that you would not have normally talked to. Talk with them. Get to know them. Spend some time with them. Alise, could you give our listeners your website one more time just in case you're one of those people that they decide, hey, you know what, I wouldn't normally talk to a coach, but I think it's time for me to take myself to the next level.
Absolutely. Probably the easiest way to find me is my personal website. It's alisecortez.com, ALISECORTEZ.com.
Awesome. And you know what, guys, we'll post that in the Facebook group. So just as a reminder, if you are not already a member of our Facebook group, hop on over to facebook.com/groups/black belt selling. We would absolutely love to have you join us over there. We post motivational quotes, posters, pictures. We have a great community of people sharing some amazing content in there. And on top of that, we post links to the websites of our guests. So we would love to have you guys join us over there. Alise, thank you so much for joining us today. This was truly a treasure of a show.
Thank you, Stephanie. My pleasure.
All right, guys, you heard it here. We're looking forward to being back here again with you guys next Friday, where we always bring you the best content, the best guests, and the best of the black belt sellers of Southwest and Central Texas, challenging you to go out there, make it a great week.